Maria never imagined her life would change so suddenly. Only a few months earlier, she woke up every morning to the sound of her husband, Daniel, moving around the kitchen, making tea the way he knew she liked it. Their little house on the edge of the countryside always felt warm, filled with laughter and full of plans. They had dreams, small, simple dreams, like planting new flowers in spring, repairing their old barn, or taking a short trip to the nearby town where Daniel once promised to buy her a blue dress she had admired through a shop window. But now, all of that felt like someone else's life. Daniel's sudden passing left a silence so deep that Maria sometimes felt it pressing against her chest. Everything looked the same around her, the fields, the fences, the horses in the distance, but inside, she felt like she was walking through a world she did not recognize. Her hands trembled when she tried to cook. Her eyes always felt heavy. Even the air felt different, as if something soft and warm had been taken away forever. For the first few days, people from the town visited her. They brought food, kind words, and short prayers. But as days passed into weeks, their visits became less frequent. Their voices changed, too. Some spoke to her kindly but from a distance, like they didn't know how to handle her sadness. Others avoided her completely. And a few whispered to each other, not knowing she could hear them, saying things that weren't cruel, but still painful. Things like, "She must be strong," or "It's hard to talk to someone who's grieving," or "I don't know what to say to her." Maria felt herself slowly fading from the place that once felt like home. Her in-laws, who had hugged her tightly during the first days, began to behave differently. Not harshly, but coldly, like they didn't know how to look at her without being reminded of their own loss. They blamed no one, yet their silence created a distance that felt sharper than words. When she tried to help around their farm, they gently asked her to rest. When she tried to talk about Daniel, they only nodded, offering short replies. It wasn't anger, just a kind of quiet wall she could not break through. Soon, Maria felt more alone than she had ever felt in her entire life. Mornings became the hardest. She would wake up expecting to hear Daniel's footsteps, but the only sound was the lonely wind brushing past the window. Some days she couldn't bring herself to open the curtains. The sunlight hurt her eyes because it reminded her of the days when her life felt full. One cold morning, as she stepped outside, she saw the old barn, the place where Daniel spent most of his time. She stood there for a long moment, her fingers trembling. The barn looked abandoned now. The wooden door creaked in the wind, and the fence Daniel had promised to repair leaned a little more each day. She walked closer, and the familiar smell of hay, dust, and earth struck her so strongly that her legs weakened. She sat down on a wooden crate just outside the barn and let her tears fall silently. "I lost everything," she whispered to herself, hugging her arms tightly around her chest. The fields stretched out endlessly before her, golden under the morning sun. But she felt invisible, like the world was moving on without her. She cried quietly, not wanting anyone to hear, though she knew no one was around. That was the moment she heard footsteps. Slow, steady footsteps, heavy enough to belong to a grown man, but gentle, as if he didn't want to startle her. Maria quickly wiped her tears, even though she knew it was pointless. Her eyes were red, and her face was pale. A tall figure approached from behind the barn. It was Ethan. Ethan was a quiet cowboy from a neighboring ranch. People in town said he didn't talk much, but he was always willing to help when someone needed an extra pair of hands. He often kept to himself, spending most of his time with his horses and cattle. Though Maria had seen him a few times before, they had never spoken more than a polite greeting. He stopped a few steps away from her, giving her space, as if he understood she needed it. "I heard the horses moving," he said softly, his voice calm and deep. "Thought someone might be here." Maria nodded, unsure what to say. She looked away, embarrassed that he had seen her crying. Ethan didn't step closer. He simply stood there, placing his hat gently under his arm. "If you need help with anything, even small things, I'm around," he added quietly. Something about his tone felt sincere. He wasn't forcing conversation, wasn't pretending to understand her pain, and wasn't offering sympathy in a way that stung. He simply sounded present, strong, patient. Maria managed a small, grateful nod. Ethan glanced at the broken fence near the barn. He was fixing that before. His voice faded, but there was kindness in his eyes. "If you want, I can finish it for you." Her throat tightened. No one had talked about Daniel's unfinished work since he left. Everyone tiptoed around anything that reminded them of him. But Ethan spoke without fear or awkwardness. "That would mean a lot," Maria finally whispered. Ethan nodded once in a simple, respectful way. "I'll bring my tools tomorrow." As he walked away, Maria watched him move across the field, his steps steady and sure. Something about him felt different from the others in town, not because he tried to fix her sadness, but because he didn't treat her like she was fragile. He treated her like a person, not a problem. Over the next few days, she quietly observed him from a distance. Ethan came as he promised. He worked on the fence without asking unnecessary questions. Sometimes he nodded at her when she came outside, but he never pushed her to talk. He always kept a respectful distance, allowing her to feel comfortable around him. For the first time in weeks, Maria felt a small moment of peace. Not happiness, but peace. Like a soft breath of fresh air after a long storm. One afternoon, as she watched Ethan work, she remembered how Daniel used to fix things around the house. The memories came gently this time, not with the same sharp pain as before. Ethan noticed her standing quietly and paused. "You don't have to watch if it makes you sad," he said. "It doesn't," she replied softly. "Not today." He nodded and continued working. Maria realized that sometimes healing didn't come from big gestures or deep conversations. Sometimes it came from someone simply being near, someone who didn't rush her, didn't judge her, didn't try to change her feelings, someone who understood silence. As the sun set and the sky turned golden, she sat by the barn once more. The wind carried the warm smell of hay and earth. Ethan packed his tools and prepared to leave, giving her a gentle nod before walking away, just as calmly as he had arrived. Maria watched him go and felt something she hadn't felt in a long time, a small spark of comfort, like a light inside her heart that had been dim for weeks. For the first time since losing her husband, she didn't feel completely alone. She didn't know it yet, but this was the beginning of a connection that would slowly reshape her world. Ethan returned the next morning exactly as he had promised. Maria saw him from the window as he walked toward the barn with his tools. He didn't knock on the door or call out her name. He simply began working on the fence, as if he understood she might not be ready for conversation yet. His quiet presence felt gentle, like someone placing a soft blanket over a cold shoulder. Maria stood by the window for a long moment, watching him. She didn't know why, but something about the way he worked made her feel calm. He didn't rush, didn't sigh, and didn't treat the task like a burden. Every movement was steady, as if fixing that fence meant more to him than just repairing wood. It felt like he was giving her a small piece of stability she desperately needed. Later, Maria stepped outside with a cup of warm tea. She didn't plan to talk. She just wanted some air. When Ethan saw her, he paused his work, wiped his forehead with the back of his hand, and gave her a small nod. Not too familiar, not too distant, just respectful. "You don't have to do all this in a single day," she said softly. Ethan shrugged lightly. "I like finishing what I start." The words hit her unexpectedly. It reminded her of Daniel, who used to say the same thing whenever he worked around the house. For a moment, Maria felt a lump in her throat, but Ethan didn't notice. Or maybe he did, and just didn't show it. After a few minutes of silence, she placed the cup of tea on a small wooden stool near him. "It's warm," she said. "Thought you might need it." He nodded again, accepting the gesture without making a big deal out of it. That was something Maria appreciated. He didn't make her feel awkward for being kind. As days passed, Ethan started coming regularly. Sometimes it was the fence, sometimes the barn door, sometimes the small gate that squeaked loudly whenever someone opened it. Every day he fixed something new, and every day he gave Maria a short greeting, then worked quietly for hours. And slowly, Maria started speaking to him. Not long conversations at first, just simple things. "The weather is colder today. You fixed the roof panel? Thank you for helping." Ethan always responded politely, never trying to stretch the conversation, never asking personal questions. He gave her control over how much she wanted to say, something no one else had done since Daniel passed. One afternoon, while he was sharpening a tool, Maria sat on the old bench near the barn. She didn't expect him to stop what he was doing, but he did. He looked at her with calm eyes, waiting as if he sensed she had something on her mind. "I used to sit here with Daniel," she whispered. "We talked about painting the barn red one day. He wanted it to look bright." Ethan listened quietly, giving her space to continue if she wanted. "I still can't believe he's gone," she said softly, her voice trembling. "Everything feels empty." Ethan set his tool down slowly. "Losing someone stays heavy for a long time," he said, "sometimes longer than people expect." His words weren't dramatic or poetic, but they had a quiet truth in them that touched her heart. "Did you lose someone?" she asked gently. Ethan looked down at his hands. "Yes," he replied. "A long time ago. But some days feel like yesterday." He didn't explain more, and Maria didn't push him. His answer was enough. It told her that he understood her pain, not from imagination, but from personal experience. After that conversation, something shifted between them. The silence they shared no longer felt empty. It felt peaceful, as if they were both learning to breathe again through the weight of their memories. Sometimes Maria would bring 2 cups of tea and place one near Ethan. He would nod gratefully and take small sips while working. Other times, she would sit quietly nearby, knitting or simply watching the sky, while Ethan continued repairing something around the farm. He didn't hover. He didn't pity her. He didn't try to make her forget. He simply made her feel like she wasn't alone. One evening, as the sun painted the sky with shades of gold and pink, Maria found Ethan fixing the barn door hinges. She approached slowly and stood beside him. "You don't have to keep helping," she said softly. "I don't want to trouble you." Ethan tightened a hinge and looked at her. "You're not troubling anyone," he replied. "I help because I choose to, not because I have to." Maria felt a warm rush of gratitude. Few people had spoken to her with such honesty in a long time. For a moment, her voice cracked. "People don't talk to me much anymore," she admitted. "Some act like I'm a burden. Others think I should have moved on already. I don't know where I belong now." Ethan stood still, listening deeply, his expression soft. Maria took a shaky breath. "I try to be strong, but everything feels so heavy. I feel like no one accepts me. Like I'm just here, without a place." Her eyes filled with tears she tried to hold back. Ethan didn't move closer. He didn't touch her. He respected the space between them, but his voice carried a strength that reached her like a warm blanket. "I accept you," he said quietly, "just as you are." Maria's breath caught. Ethan looked at her gently. "You don't have to rush anything. You don't have to pretend. I'm here, not to replace what you lost. Just here, if you need someone around. Those simple words broke the wall inside her chest. She lowered her head, tears falling freely, not from pain alone, but from the relief of finally being understood. For the first time in a long while, she didn't cry out of loneliness. She cried because someone finally saw her. Ethan waited patiently, giving her time to breathe. When she finally wiped her tears, he picked up his hat and softly nodded. "If you ever feel overwhelmed," he said in a gentle voice, "you can just talk. Or sit. Silence is fine, too." Maria felt something warm spread through her heart. "Thank you," she whispered. He gave her one last, reassuring look before walking back toward the gate, the sunset casting long shadows behind him. Maria watched him leave, feeling different inside. Not healed, not whole, but slightly lighter. For weeks, she had walked around like a shadow of herself, believing no one wanted her around. But Ethan, with his quiet ways and steady presence, had opened a small door inside her heart. A door she didn't realize she needed. She didn't know where this connection would lead. She didn't even know if she was ready for anything more than these small, peaceful moments. But she knew one thing for certain. Ethan's words meant something she had been longing to hear. "I'm here for you." Those words stayed with her long after he was gone, echoing in her mind like a gentle promise. Maria didn't notice the change at first. She was too focused on managing her days, keeping herself occupied, and finding small moments of peace. But as she continued seeing Ethan, sometimes for a few minutes, sometimes for an hour, she began to sense something different in the way people looked at her when she went into town. At first it was just small things. A neighbor who usually greeted her warmly offered only a short nod. A woman she had known for years lowered her voice when Maria walked by. Two men near the grocery store stopped talking and exchanged glances when she passed them. Maria brushed these moments aside. She told herself she must be imagining it. After all, the town had always been full of whispers, especially about things that weren't fully understood. But slowly, the whispers grew louder. One afternoon, while she was picking up some bread from the bakery, she overheard two women standing near the counter. "It's too soon," one whispered. "She should be more careful," the other replied. Maria didn't turn around. She didn't ask what they meant. She simply paid for her bread and walked out, her heart beating heavily. She didn't want to believe they were talking about her, but deep inside, she knew. The truth became clear when she visited her in-laws the next day. They welcomed her inside, but their expressions seemed different, uncertain, uncomfortable. She sat with Daniel's mother, who avoided making eye contact for most of the conversation. Finally, after a long, tense silence, his mother spoke softly. "People in town are talking, Maria." Maria felt her stomach tighten. "Talking about what?" Her mother-in-law hesitated before answering. "About you and Ethan." A sharp ache rose in Maria's chest. She didn't know whether to feel hurt, angry, or embarrassed. "We've done nothing wrong," she said quietly. "I know," her mother-in-law replied. "Ethan is a good man, but people have their own ways of seeing things." Maria looked down at her hands. The room felt smaller, the air heavier. "It doesn't matter what people say," she whispered, though her voice trembled. Her mother-in-law touched her hand gently. "You are still grieving. They think it is too soon for you to be around another man." Maria felt tears build in her eyes, but she held them back. She stayed only a few minutes longer before excusing herself and leaving. She walked home slowly, each step feeling heavier than the last. When she reached the barn, Ethan was there, cleaning tools after fixing a broken latch. He stopped when he saw her, sensing immediately that something was wrong. "You look troubled," he said quietly. Maria stood a few feet away, her hands shaking slightly. "People are talking about us," she said. "About me." Ethan nodded, not surprised. "Small towns talk. They always have." "It's making things harder," Maria whispered. "I don't want people to think I forgot Daniel. I don't want people to think I'm doing something wrong." "You're not," Ethan replied with steady calmness. "But they're judging me," she said, her voice breaking. "I feel like I'm losing my place here. First I lost Daniel, then people stopped accepting me. And now this." Ethan set down his tools and walked a little closer. Not too close, just enough to show he was listening fully. "Maria," he said softly, "people talk because it's easy. They don't feel your grief. They don't know what your days are like. They see moments, not the whole story." Maria wiped her eyes. "But their words still hurt." "I know," he replied. "But you can't let their whispers guide your life." For a moment, neither of them spoke. The evening breeze moved through the fields, the soft rustling of grass filling the silence. Ethan finally said, "If my being around you brings you more pain than peace, I can keep my distance. I don't want to be the reason you're hurting." Maria felt a sudden panic at the thought of him staying away. His quiet company had become a part of her days, steady, comforting, safe. She realized she didn't want to lose that. "No," she said quickly. "Please, don't stop coming. I don't want to be alone again." Ethan looked at her with eyes full of understanding. He nodded gently. "Then don't let them take away what brings you comfort." Maria felt something warm spread through her chest. His words didn't erase her worries, but they soothed the fear that she might lose the one person who had helped her breathe again. That night, Maria couldn't sleep. She lay awake, thinking about everything: her grief, the whispers, the loneliness, and the small moments of peace she shared with Ethan. She wondered what Daniel would think if he could see her now. Would he be upset? Would he feel replaced? The thought stung her, and she turned to face Daniel's photograph on her bedside table. His warm smile in the picture made her heart ache. The next morning, Maria walked to the cemetery. The sky was gray and the air cool, but the quiet surroundings helped her gather her thoughts. She stood before Daniel's grave for a long time, holding back tears until she could no longer hold them. "I don't know what to do," she whispered. "I miss you every day. Nothing feels right without you, but I'm trying. I really am." Her voice trembled as she continued. "People think I'm moving on too quickly, but I'm not moving on. I'm just trying to breathe again." She wiped her tears gently. "I still love you. I always will. But I can't live every day feeling empty. I need someone to talk to, someone to help me stand." As she spoke, the heavy guilt she had been carrying began to soften. She realized she wasn't replacing Daniel. She was simply learning how to live with the pain while finding moments of peace where she could. "I hope you understand," she whispered. "I hope you'd want me to be okay." A soft breeze swept across her face, almost like a gentle touch. Maria closed her eyes, letting the wind brush away her tears. As she walked home, she felt lighter, not healed, but understood, even if only by herself. Over the next days, Maria began standing a little taller. She didn't confront anyone, but she didn't lower her eyes anymore when she saw people whisper. She greeted them politely and went about her day with quiet dignity. Some people continued judging her, some softened when they saw her strength, and a few even praised her for managing everything alone. Ethan noticed the change, too. One afternoon, while repairing a broken window frame, he looked at her and said softly, "You seem stronger." Maria smiled a little. "Maybe I'm learning not to let everyone's words control me." Ethan nodded. "That's courage." Maria sat on the bench beside him. "You helped me find it." "I didn't do much," he said. "You did enough," she replied. The connection between them grew, not because they spent long hours talking, but because they shared comfort in small, quiet moments. No expectations, no pressure, just two people who understood loss and respected each other's silence. Maria began helping Ethan with small tasks, handing him tools, brushing dust off the barn shelves, or simply sitting near him while he worked. And Ethan continued supporting her in gentle ways, checking on the animals, fixing things before she even asked, and being someone she could talk to when the world felt too heavy. Maria realized slowly that courage didn't always come from standing up loudly. Sometimes it came from taking small steps each day, choosing peace over fear, and trusting the people who stayed beside her. And through all the challenges, the whispers, the doubts, the guilt, Ethan remained steady, patient, and sincere. Maria no longer felt like she was disappearing from her own life. She was beginning to feel seen again. She was beginning to feel accepted, if not by the whole town, then at least by someone who mattered. The days slowly turned into weeks, and life around Maria began to shift in small but meaningful ways. At first, she didn't notice the changes. She was simply trying her best to rebuild her routine, to find her place again, and to hold on to the little pieces of peace she had found. But one morning, as she opened the window to let in the fresh air, she realized something. Her heart didn't feel as heavy as before. The pain was still there, but it no longer controlled every part of her day. Ethan continued to visit, helping with anything that needed repair. Sometimes it was something big, like a broken fence. Other times it was something small, like a loose nail or a squeaky hinge. But his presence was never forced. He came only when needed, and he always kept a respectful distance, letting her lead every step of their growing connection. One morning, while Maria was sweeping the porch, she saw Ethan walking up the path with a small bag in his hand. "What's that?" she asked with a curious smile. "Seeds," Ethan replied. "For the garden. Thought you might want to plant something new?" Maria looked at the small bag and felt a warm feeling touch her heart. Daniel once talked about planting flowers with her, but they never got the chance. Planting something new felt like bringing life back into the place that once felt empty. They worked together in silence, planting seeds gently into the soft soil behind the house. The sun was warm, and the air smelled fresh, carrying the faint scent of wildflowers from the nearby fields. Maria found herself smiling quietly as she worked. "This feels nice," she said softly. "It does," Ethan replied. "New things grow when we give them a chance." Maria looked up at him, understanding the deeper meaning behind his simple words. She didn't need him to explain. She felt it in her heart. As the days passed, the little garden became something special for them. Together, they watered the soil, removed weeds, and watched tiny green sprouts appear. Each new sprout felt like a small victory, a small joy, a reminder that life moved forward even when it hurt. One afternoon, while Maria was arranging tools in the barn, she heard Ethan speaking softly to a horse. She stopped and listened quietly. His voice was calm, steady, and caring. Even the animals seemed to trust him naturally. It reminded her of Daniel's gentle nature, but it didn't make her sad the way such memories used to. Instead, she felt peaceful, as if her past and present could finally exist side by side without fighting each other. As time went on, some people in town began noticing the changes in Maria. They saw her standing taller, smiling more often, and taking care of her home with renewed strength. Some people still whispered, but others softened when they saw her courage. One day, while shopping for groceries, an older lady approached her. "You look stronger these days," the woman said kindly. "It's good to see you taking care of yourself." Maria smiled, grateful for the rare kindness. "Thank you," she replied. Not everyone accepted the changes, but Maria no longer let their opinions shape her heart. She understood now that healing didn't follow a schedule, and neither did life. One evening, as the sun dipped low and painted the sky in soft orange shades, Ethan finished repairing the barn roof. Maria brought him a glass of water and sat on the bench beside him. "You've helped me more than I can ever say," she said quietly. "You've helped yourself, too," Ethan answered. "I just stood nearby." Maria looked at him, her eyes soft. "You were there when no one else was." Ethan didn't respond immediately. Instead, he took a slow breath and looked out over the fields. "I didn't want you to feel alone," he said finally. "No one should feel that kind of loneliness." Maria nodded, feeling warmth spread through her chest. "I don't feel alone anymore." For a long moment, they sat quietly together, watching the sun disappear behind the horizon. The silence between them felt full, warm, and peaceful. A few days later, Maria visited Daniel's grave again. This time, she brought a single wildflower she found near the barn. She placed it gently on the ground and closed her eyes. "I'm learning to live again," she whispered softly. "I hope that's okay." The breeze brushed her cheek like a gentle answer, and she smiled through her tears. On her way home, she found Ethan repairing a wooden step near her porch. He looked up as she approached. "You didn't have to do that," she said. "I saw you trip on it last week," Ethan replied. "Didn't want you getting hurt." Maria felt a sudden wave of appreciation. He noticed the small things, things no one else paid attention to, not because he felt obligated, but because he cared. As the weeks passed, their connection grew naturally, without pressure or fear. They spent more time talking, sharing stories, and supporting each other through quiet moments. Maria learned about Ethan's past, how he lost someone close, how he had lived alone for years, and how he found comfort in simple routines. And Ethan learned about Maria's dreams, her memories of Daniel, and the things that brought her peace. They didn't rush anything. They didn't label anything. They simply allowed life to unfold gently, like petals opening one by one in the soft morning light. One evening, after a long day of repairing the barn shelves, Ethan leaned against the wall and looked at Maria with a thoughtful expression. "You've changed," he said softly. Maria blinked in surprise. "How?" "You smile more," he replied. "And when you do, it reaches your eyes." Maria felt her cheeks warm and she looked down shyly. "Maybe I'm learning how to be happy again." "It suits you," Ethan said quietly. The words touched her in a way that felt deep and honest, not overwhelming, not heavy, just sincere. A soft silence followed, the kind that felt comfortable, as if their hearts spoke without needing words. Maria finally lifted her head. "Ethan," she said softly, "I don't know what the future holds. I don't want to rush anything. But I want you to know I'm grateful for you." Ethan's expression softened. "I'm grateful for you too," he replied. "You've given me someone to care about again." The softness in his voice made Maria's heart flutter. She didn't say anything for a while, letting his words settle inside her like warm light. Rain began to fall lightly, tapping gently on the barn roof. The air smelled fresh, filled with the scent of wet soil and new beginnings. Ethan reached for his hat and stepped toward the door. Before leaving, he turned back and spoke in a quiet, steady voice. "I'm here for you, now and always." Maria felt a deep warmth in her heart at those words. She nodded, her eyes shining with emotion. She didn't need anything more. That single sentence carried enough comfort to fill the emptiness she once feared would never fade. As the months passed, Maria's life slowly rebuilt itself. Not the same as before, but something new, something gentle, something filled with hope. She continued caring for her home, growing her garden, and finding joy in the small routines she once shared with Daniel. But now, she wasn't doing it alone. Ethan became a steady part of her days, not in a rushed or overwhelming way, but in a calm, natural rhythm, like the sunrise every morning and the soft wind every evening. Maria learned that healing didn't mean forgetting. It meant allowing her heart to open again, carefully and slowly, without fear. It meant carrying her memories with love while embracing the new moments life offered. And with each passing day, she realized something quietly beautiful. She hadn't lost everything. She had found someone who helped her stand again, someone patient, someone kind, someone who whispered, "I'm here for you," and meant it. And for the first time in a long time, Maria looked toward the future, a future she wasn't afraid of anymore.